Hi everyone, welcome back to my continuing coding live stream. Today I'm working on building out a React UI component from scratch. It's an outliner component. Let me show you what it's intended to look like. So I'll just switch over so you can see my screen. This is Workflowy, it's a product, and I'm building just a little UI component that looks a bit like this, where you can kind of type in whatever you want in this sort of format and make a tree of notes. So far we've built a project, put it on GitHub. It's called React Outliner. So you can find the code for it on my GitHub. Just look for the repository React Outliner. There's going to be some documentation for this coming soon. At the moment it's just still set to the template that I've built this from. Also, we've already published this to NPM, so you can NPM install this in a React project to try it out. What we have so far is this little thing here. It's just a list really, where you can type in, you can hit enter to basically create new notes. Now there's a few issues with it, a few edge cases. We can't delete notes yet, so there's work yet to be done, and we're continuing with it in this session. If you want to catch up in the previous sessions, where are they? Find my YouTube channel, The Data Wrangler. Look under playlists, and you can find the coding live stream React Outliner. Go down to that. The first session is up. This thing here, deleted video, is actually the second session, which I'm currently uploading during this stream now. So hopefully it doesn't affect the quality of this stream too much. It's 65% upload. In 10 minutes it will be there. So if you want to catch up on the previous two sessions, find out what this is all about and how we got to where we are in this session, you can catch up on YouTube. Let's have a quick look at my plan. So I'm up to the third milestone now. I want to be able to use Control-Delete to remove a note from my list. And when I've added a new note, I want to be able to focus it so I can start typing that particular note, which I haven't done yet. So we've only got a couple of things left to do in milestone 3 before we get onto the fun stuff in milestone 4, which is using drag and drop to rearrange the list. Now my tests where I left them last session are failing. And that's because I went and changed something just to make this easier. I'm just going to change this back for a default new note. It's going to be an empty string. So that should get my tests all back to a passing state. Awesome. And the new test I want to write is that I can press Control plus Delete to delete the currently focused note. Before I can do that, I just want to know what happens, what key is pressed. So I've got the code for my React component here. I'm handling the key down event, and I want to know what the event looks like for a Control-Delete key press. So I'm just going to log out the event. Cool. I've saved that. I'm just going back to my test bed. Oh, I need to... So I can actually see the notes again. I need to kind of have something there so I can actually see it and select it. Cool. I'm going to open up the dev tools. That's just hitting F12. Let me just reintegrate that into the page. There we go. I'm looking in the console. So I'm clicking here, I'm going to hit Control-Delete, and I'm going to open up, so I'm console logging the event here. What I'm interested in is the key field, so delete. So that I could have guessed that. I didn't have to do a console log just for that. But I just want to remind myself what the control key does. And I'm just searching for that here. I'm sure there's something here for it. Oh, there it is. Control key equals true. So I go back to my tests. I'm going to make a new test. Pressing Control plus Delete deletes a note. So I'm going to use the same basic setup. I'm using Enzyme for testing here, so I'm basically instantiating my React component so I can run tests against it. I'm going to do something similar to what I did here with the key down event. I'm gonna simulate. Oh, I better actually do it on the note. Or some debugging code that I can delete. So I'm pulling the first note out of my element hierarchy there. And now I'm simulating the key down event again. The event I'm simulating this time is the delete key press. And what was the thing I needed? Control key. So I want delete plus the control key. Now what do I expect to see after this? Now I'm going to do what I've been doing, and I don't think this is the best way to do this, but I'm yet to... I'm going to have to do a bit of refactoring later for these tests to make sure they're not fragile, because they are a little bit fragile at the moment. It's very easy at the moment for me to break all these tests. What I'm expecting to happen here, so I'm initializing an outliner here with no notes, so that means it's going to have a default note, which is why we can get that first note. Simulating a control delete key press on that should delete it. So what we should end up with is basically what we're looking for here is the HTML for an empty outliner. Now theoretically it probably shouldn't do that. It should probably reconstitute like a new placeholder note for you to start editing. But we haven't got that far yet, so let's just say that it's empty, which means it's just like an empty div. Now, to get my tests passed again, I just have to make sure that is set to an empty note, because all my tests depend on that, and they probably shouldn't, but that's something that's going to have to change later. So now I can see I've got my tests running in live reload. All my tests pass, except for my new one, it's failing, and that's because I haven't implemented this control delete behavior yet. So I'll have my tests, I'll have my jest window here and my tests side by side, and I'm going to go in and implement that behavior here now. So I don't need this debug code here anymore. I'll just delete that. What I'm looking for here is I'm looking for key to be delete and event dot oh, it's auto completing it. So I was going to go and look in the other code for that, but it's auto completing it here, which is cool. So control key, so that has to be true. So if that's the case, I now want to set the state in my React component, but I want to remove the current note. Now what's the best way of doing that? I know what the index is here, so I can literally just splice that note out of the list and set it back into the state. So I'm setting the state of the component, I'm setting the notes, I'm setting it based off the current state. I think splice is the function that I want. So we're starting at index, so we're starting at the index of the current note. I want to delete one. What's the other thing that you pass in here? Nothing. Oh, there's two. There we go. I could pass in items to add if I wanted to replace the deleted item with some other item. But I'm not going to do that. I just want to delete an item, and I think that will do it for me. So if I'm correct, I can save this. It will rerun my tests, and my new test should pass. Oh, something has gone wrong. So it's still there. The question is am I even executing this code? What I'm going to do here is I'm going to use it.only just to focus this on its one single test, so I'm not seeing the output from any other test. I'm just focusing on the one test now. I'm going to put some logging here to make sure that this code path gets executed. Maybe this code path is not even being executed. Yeah, it is. So I see that my code path here is being executed. So am I using the splice function wrong? I think that's actually going to modify that in place, which is probably a bad thing. Let's just be super careful here. So notes. I'm going to use the splice function to basically clone the array. But no, not splice, sorry, slice. I'm going to use, so slice with no arguments is effectively cloning the array. And then I'm going to use the splice function to remove that item. And I'm really just pulling this out to a separate variable here as well, just so I can console log it. I want to see what's in there. I want to see that that item has been removed. Let's just see what that does. Doesn't quite do what I wanted. Can we see what this looks like before I make the change? State.notes. What is this going to give us? Same thing. Okay, at this point, maybe I'm using the splice function wrong. So I'm just going to look up the docs for it. Let's just make sure I'm using the splice function correctly. Oh, so I've messed this up because it returns the removed items. It doesn't return the array. I mean, it's not a sensible way to implement a function, really. Let's see what I'm doing here. So I need to split this up. So here, I'm taking a copy of the array. So I'm doing that because the splice function modifies it, and I don't want to modify the existing state. That's like pulling the rug out from under React and its state management. And then I'm going to call splice on that, which modifies that array in place. And the thing it returns is the thing that's removed, which I don't want to add back into my state. So that's what I was doing wrong there. Now this should get me what I want. So I've cloned the notes from the current state. I've removed this one item at that index, and I'm splicing the modified array back into the state. Will this give us a passing test? Yeah, so the test we've been working on passed. I've got all the other tests disabled, so I'm going to re-enable the other tests now. And with a bit of luck, they'll all still be passing as well, and I haven't broken anything. Cool, all the tests are passing. Now I can test that this control delete behavior works in the actual web page. And like I've been doing, I'm just going to hack this so that I've got something there to actually click on to start editing. I have to find a proper way to solve that. So now I should be able to add a bunch of things and hit control delete. Is this going to work? Drum roll, please. Yeah. It's a bit quirky. It's a bit quirky, but it's working. I deleted all the items from there. I'll set that back the way it was, so all my tests pass again. Thank you, JavaScript docs. I needed to know how the splice function works, but I don't need you open now. All my tests are passing. Let's go and look at my plan. So I'm pretty happy with the control delete behavior. Focusing a newly created node. How am I going to do that? Now, this could be a little bit tricky, and at this stage I may need to refactor to have a proper interface for a note. Let's say that a note has some string. Now we need this anyway. We're going to need this at some point, if not now. Why can't I spell? That'll do. So we've got an interface for a note with some text. We'll change this over to being an array of notes instead of an array of strings. Same thing here. This is going to fail a bunch of tests. Actually, we'll change the default note needs to change here. And this thing here is no longer a string, so that needs to change. Most of this code is okay, I think. It's just here that we need to print the text in the node rather than the node itself. So this is going to make a bunch of tests fail. And it's probably all just I just did Control-Shift-B there to compile this within Visual Studio Code. So Visual Studio Code will then going to give us a list of the issues. So these are TypeScript compile errors, and I just need to change my text to sort of encompass this new format for how we define a note. I think that's all of them. Hopefully that'll give us all our passing tests again. Cool. So I'm trying to, what I'm trying to get to here is to be able to focus a note. Now, I should have an autofocus. Do I have an autofocus? No, where does that come from? Oh, I'm thinking of an input. Let me just Google if there's a way to do this. Otherwise, I'm probably trying to do something that may not be able to be done. React autofocus div. I may have to jump through a few hoops to get this working. Yeah. I'm not going to worry about that for the moment because it's a little bit tricky. What I would have to do to get the autofocus working here would be to maybe have another component, like factor this out to another component, put like a focus attribute or autofocus attribute on that, the way that we can do with an input in React, and then use a React ref to be able to actually get the DOM element and set focus on it. So that's going a little bit deeper than I wanted to go, so I'm not going to worry about that. I will fix that later. I might actually put some cleanup tasks here. So autofocus, new element, and what's the other thing? I want to refactor my tests as well later on. Oh, and I also need a good README for the actual component. But that's not something that we need to live stream. So I'm going to say let's not worry about that. I do want to do a commit. I basically finished milestone 3. I didn't quite get that done, but I want to move on to the fun stuff, which is the drag and drop down here in milestone 4. But I do need to commit my code now because I've done a fair bit of work here. And what exactly have I done? I can create new notes by hitting enter, and delete a note by hitting Control plus delete. So I'm just going to do a quick check of my code to make sure it looks good. I've turned off something in Tslint there. we've got set up for testing. So there is a fair bit in this commit. I'm committing that now. And I'm going to push that up to the GitHub repository. So if you are following along, you can grab that code now and try running it for yourself. Now we'll get on to doing some drag and drop. Now before we do the drag and drop, I need a drag handle, something I can use to grab. You can see in here in Workflowy, it's this bullet here. I've pre-prepared a little bullet that I can put in my code. I actually did this by going inspect element here, then using the Chrome dev tools to kind of figure out how this worked, and they use the content editable attribute here the same way that I'm doing in my outliner, and this is their kind of SVG icon bullet. I've made something earlier that's similar to that. If I can just find it here, a little bit of SVG to render a bullet. Let's add that to my code here. At this point, I need like a parent div to hold the content editable div, and also this icon. This is possibly where I'll need to use Flexbox to do a little bit of CSS layout. Let's move that up. I need to put my key at that top level in the list. So that's the thing that React uses to basically manage this or connect the state in the virtual DOM to the actual DOM. This is going to screw all my tests over, unfortunately, because I'm testing it against like full HTML, which I shouldn't be. But that is something I'm going to have to come back and fix later. But let's not worry about the testing just for the moment, because we're going to integrate drag and drop. And I don't even know how to test drag and drop. I don't even know if it's possible. So we're not going to worry about that. Here's my test bed. Here's my test bed. So I'm just going to put back my placeholder text so I can click on a note here. Okay, so there the layout is kind of down, like with the bullet. I really want them side by side. So this is where I want to use Flexbox. Normally I wouldn't even use direct CSS, but I would use Tailwind. This is the Tailwind cheat sheet, which is awesome if you do use Tailwind. I'm not using Tailwind in this project, but I do want to just use this cheat sheet because it tells me what I need to use to get the same styling I would normally use in Tailwind. And I'm going to use inline styling. That's just the simplest way to get styling working in this React component. So I'll add some styles here. Display should be flex. What I want is a flex row. So flex direction is row. That's possibly all that I need. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, so they're there, but they're not aligned nicely, and I need some margins as well. So I'm going to add a style to my div here, just to put a margin on the left-hand side of a couple of pixels. That's could probably do with a little bit more than actually. Let's triple it, 15 pixels. Cool, that's all right. Now, what I want to do is I want to center all the items in this row. And if you've been doing any CSS for a while, you know how difficult it can be to center things. But with Flexbox, it's pretty easy. I'll use align items is what I'd normally use in Tailwind. Item center is what I'd use in Tailwind, but that evaluates to this align item center. So I'm going to use that. And hopefully that'll get the bullet and the text lining up nicely. Cool, so you can see that the text just moved up a little bit, so it's aligned nicely to the bullet. The bullet's probably a little bit too big. Let's try making it a little bit smaller. It's going to be a good drag handle though, I think. Now we'll just add a couple more. Oh, you know what I need to do here, and I'll need to account for this later in my tests because I'm just going to hack this in quickly so I can see it. Is I need to prevent the on key down for the enter and the control delete. I want to actually stop that going to the regular DOM, so I'll do a prevent default here. Like I said, I haven't accounted for this in my tests, so that is another thing that's going to break my tests, but I'll come back and I'll deal with that later. So now I should be able to hit enter. Oh yeah, cool. So it doesn't add an extra line to the note, which is what I wanted. Cool, so we're getting somewhere. Now, I'm going to be using a library called React Beautiful Drag and Drop from Atlassian. You can find it on GitHub here. You can install it from NPM. I've used this before and it's pretty cool. You can see here like they've got an example here of a Trello style kind of lists, dragging things around. I can't remember off the top of my head how to use this. I have used it before, so I'm literally just going to go through the instructions here, and or maybe look at one of their demos. It's reasonably simple. Let's have a look at installation. Let's have a look at examples and samples. So we'll install this thing in our project. So just installing that into our project for our component. We'll import it into our code. Whoops, looks like I've accidentally included an import here. Because TypeScript or IntelliSense or whatever in Visual Studio Code imports things as you use them. Sometimes if you type in a mistake, it'll import something that you didn't expect. So I'll just remove that. We've got React set up already. Simple list. That's what we want. That's exactly the example we want, is a simple list. So let's have a look at that. But we want to look at the code for this. Where do I find the code? So there's a nice set of storybook examples for React Drag and Drop Beautiful, where you can actually come in and play with it and see what it can do, which is kind of cool. But I'm looking simple vertical list. That's what I want. I'm looking for something that's got some code. Oh, here we are. So cool. So we're in like a live coding environment here that's going to show us how to use this. And like I can't remember off the top of my head exactly how to use this, but because I have used it before, I kind of understand what all this means. I just need to kind of rejig my memory. So there's a bunch of things there that I want to import. The installation finished. So we've installed React Drag and Drop Beautiful. Let's look at the actual JSX code here. So we need a drag context. Now there is like a handler here. I'll leave the handler there just so we can see what it does. So I'm gonna wrap this whole thing in this drag context. I'm just gonna have like a function here that does a console log, just so we can see that what's happening when that, kind of when this event is being raised. So I'll close off this whole thing here. So we've got a drag drop context. What else do we need? So we need everything wrapped in a droppable. Let's do that. So anything that we want to be droppable needs to be wrapped this way. That goes, you can see here that it's going outside this map, so it's going outside the rendering of the list of things. So I'm going to put that up here, and we'll close that off down the end here, and we better indent everything in the middle here. Now that creates a function with some stuff. This is fairly convoluted. but it achieves a good result. And I may have to make some changes to this to make sure it works in TypeScript. Style, get list, what does that do? Where does this function get list style come from? Do I even need that? Oh, here we go. So I'll probably refactor this and change how it works, but I just want to get it working first. So I'm just going to pop that in the function there. TypeScript wants me to kind of define types for some of this stuff. So let's just do that. What's this grid thing? That's up here. I'm just going to hard code that. Again, I'm going to change this. I'm going to refactor this in a minute. There's no need to keep it the way they have it. So where did I get to? So now I'm onto the items itself. So that looks very similar to what I've got. You can see this mapping here is very similar to what I've done here with my map function. TypeScript just wants me to type this as well. I don't know. There might be some proper types to this that I'll try later, but I'm just going to make it the any type now so that TypeScript isn't complaining. It's complaining about the closing tag for that. Why is that? Oh, okay. I've missed some closing tags here. Like I know there's, and let's just check to see what they've got here with their closing tag. So it's that and that. Possibly this div. Yeah, there is a div. There is a div there. So let's close off that div. Okay, cool. That looks better. There's no errors in Visual Studio Code there now. Now I'm down into the map function here for each item. I need to make a draggable. So I'm going to wrap the div that I had there. I'll keep that div. I mean, it's probably still useful to have that. My key here is my index. That's going to be the same. Oh, actually, I can. This might break it later, but I'll put it there like that for now. I'm just going to format this the way I like to format it. So all that stuff there is probably going to break it. I need to have some kind of IDs or something, I think, for that. Okay, so I've got the draggable in there. I need to wrap it in this function as well. Hang on, that comes under the draggable, doesn't it? Yep, it comes under the draggable. So you can see I'm doing some fairly intense surgery on my React component here just to get this drag and drop in there. I have no idea what this is going to do to my tests. This could really kill my tests completely, and it could take a fair bit of effort to get them working again. So I need to close off that function. I need to close off the draggable. Something I'm missing, something I've done wrong here. I mean, I've got to put all this stuff in yet, but I don't need that yet. Oh, it's just saying. Oh, there's another Tslint issue warning that it's complaining about. Let's just turn that off. There's no point having it complain to you about code that is half complete. So we turn that off. Cool. It looks like the TypeScript code is going to compile I'm still missing a couple of things. I'm missing this ref, which is a concept in React for getting the getting like the actual DOM element back, getting a reference to the DOM element that this creates. Because what we're creating here is a virtual DOM element, but ref allows you to get back an actual DOM element, and that's how beautiful React Beautiful drag and drop wires this stuff up. It's expecting to have some props put through. Actually, the drag handle props is what I'm going to move to the bullet. So the bullet is going to be the drag handle, but I'll just leave it there now. I'll just try and get it working the way it is. We're plugging in a style here for this whole thing, and it's going to overwrite my style here. And they've got that coming from a function called get item style, I think it was, get item style, which I'm going to want to change this. I'm definitely going to want to change this, but I'm just trying to get their code working, basically integrated with mine in the simplest possible way. So I'm just going to reuse their code for the moment, and then once it's working, I will refactor it to work the way that I want. But I've also got to pass in my styles here. So this, I still want this thing to be, you know, a Flexbox row. So I'm just going to copy and paste that into the styles there that I'm adding for the item. That's Tslint complaining again, but this time I'll just fix that properly. Cool. So we have added React Beautiful drag and drop. Is it going to work? I have no idea. Like, you know, there's probably some sort of bug in this code somewhere, some issue that's going to stop it working, but we're in a position where we'd like to try it at least. So Draggable requires a Draggable ID. So I do need to add some IDs here. I'm just going to see if I can get by with the index. I've got that though. Why doesn't that work? Draggable requires a Draggable ID. I'm just gonna, this isn't gonna be a proper solution, but I'm just gonna try and hard code that Draggable ID there, just to see if I can get rid of that error. Yep, so that gets rid of that. So I've got to pass in a proper ID, but I thought index would be okay. I thought that would be okay for a starting point, but clearly it's not. I don't know if I even need that one. I better leave it to start with. So what they're doing here is they're passing through the ID of their item, and that's set to the index there. But so I kind of want a unique ID for this. I am just going to do this quickly using something I already know, which is I think the library is NodeUID. That will allow me to create GUIDs on the fly that I can use to be IDs for these nodes. This may not be a long-term solution, but it will hopefully help me get my thing working here. Now, can I get, I just want to see if I can get, I can't remember if I can get TypeScript types for this. Hopefully they'll be there. Oh, that seemed to work. Cool. So, can I, if I added, I'm actually going to type this so it's a node. And I'm going to add a unique ID for each node. It might actually be useful to have a unique ID for each node anyway, because later on we might want to store these nodes in a database. So I'll make the ID be a v4 UID. So that's automatically imported my UID library. If we go up to the top here, you can see v4 has been imported from NodeUID. That'll get me a big long string of numbers, a unique ID for that. And what I'll do is, by default, I'm going to add just a bunch of notes. So we can just quickly see if this drag and drop is going to work. Oh, I need to wire through those IDs. It doesn't, for some reason, it doesn't like using the indexes. I thought I might be able to get away with that, just as a starting point, but it didn't seem to work. So what I want to have here is the ID of my note will be the React key, and it will be the draggable ID. Encounter 2 children with the same key. Okay, so this is getting a bit more complicated than I was going to do. But what I might do is I'll make a helper function called make note text string. So I'm just gonna use this to be able to plug in a bunch of notes. So I want to make a bunch of different notes basically, rather than having this default note. So make note 1, note 2. So whichever code path it comes through, it's going to make a bunch of notes. This is just for my own quick manual testing. This isn't something that's going to be a feature of this component for other people to use. I'm really just trying to, quickly as possible, get drag and drop working. Now it's not completely working because I'm not handling. You can see that it's almost there. You can see that I can drag and drop these notes, but the thing that I'm missing at the moment is I'm not handling this function here on drag end. So if I could handle this function and set the state, if I set the state of this component to be, to have the notes rearranged into their new order, it's going to work. It's almost there. And then I'm going to want to do some refactoring and maybe clean up the way these styles work. For this session though, that's all I'm going to do. I need to take a break now. I'm going to have some lunch. I'm going to have a bite to eat. I'm going to be back live streaming in an hour and we're going to finish this project. So I'll see you in an hour. Bye-bye.